Welcome to the eLABorate Topics podcast, where we focus on lab-specific strategies for medical laboratory professionals. We're proud to be the healthcare detectives that work behind the scenes to get the results needed to influence medical decisions. Let's grow together and jump right into the lab.
Welcome to another episode of eLABorate Topics. eLABorate Topics is a weekly podcast where myself and my co-hosts, Tywana Wilson and Stephanie Whitehead, come to you to bring you guests and topics to help you to excel both inside and outside the lab. I'm Lona Small, and I'm a quality assurance specialist. I'm a process improvement consultant, and I'm the founder of Lab OPEX Training and Consulting. And today I'm excited about our guests. We're having today an international guest, Olibrian Mallari. And Olibrian is coming in from the Philippines. So, hi, Olibrian.
Hi, Lona. Good evening from the Philippines. Good morning from the US of A. And I would like to greet each and everyone who our listeners in this program. A pleasant day to each and everyone, regardless of your place of origin.
Wow. Thanks so much, Ollie. So,
Mhm.
Olibrian is a registered medical technologist in the Philippines. He has several certifications internationally. He's a New York clinical lab technologist, the NYSED certified. He's International Medical Lab Scientist, ACPI certified, and he's the head of hematology section and phlebotomy at the Notre Dame de Chartres Hospital. He has many other roles, and I am going to just give Olibrian an opportunity to tell us a little bit about himself. So, Olibrian, we're going to ask you to tell you a little bit about yourself, your journey in the profession, why you decided to be a medical lab scientist.
Thank you very much, Lona, for that very warm welcome. Well, again, good day to each and every one of you, to our listeners. So I'm Olibrian Mallari, all the way from the Philippines, the Pearl of the Orient. Just like what Lona said, I've been a medical technologist for quite some time. But despite of the length of my professional career, I would say that just like anybody else, I started from a very humble beginning. Way back when I was in college, I started my profession as a medical technologist, actually as a volunteer at the Philippine Red Cross. Back then, I started my medical technology practice as a phlebotomist. Back then, they were actually looking for a phlebotomist, and luckily, I was at the right time, I was at the right place. However, I did not have the right skill during that time because back then I was still in college. But still, I got the nerve and I took the courage to apply for that volunteer position. And luckily, fortunately, I got the position as a phlebotomist, volunteer phlebotomist at the Philippine Red Cross. And in that institution, I actually served my service there for around 2 years, if my memory serves me right. And after that, I took my licensure examination for medical technology because here in the Philippines, right after you finish your bachelor's degree, you need to take a licensure examination, which is conducted by a national government here in the Philippines in order for you to practice your profession as a medical technologist. And luckily, I passed the licensure examination right away. And from there, after passing the licensure examination, I started my very first work as a faculty at the University of Baguio, one of the best schools in the field of medical technology. Actually, it's one of the top 10 universities offering the medical technology program. Luckily and fortunately, I was hired to work in their institution as a faculty. I taught there for quite some time, teaching um, young professionals, teaching students, tertiary students who would want to pursue a career in the medical laboratory science profession. Then after that, after teaching in the University of Baguio, I also taught in another university, St. Louis University. St. Louis University is also one of the best schools here in the Philippines offering medical technology. Actually, it's the number one university in the entire country, in the entire Philippines, offering medical technology program. And I was lucky enough and fortunate, as I would say, that I was given the position as a faculty member in their university. And just like in my previous work, I was also responsible for teaching future medical laboratory science professionals. And aside from teaching, as I was teaching in the university, I was also given an opportunity to teach in the national platform, in the national level, to prepare graduate students who would also pursue and take their licensure examination for medical technology. So here in the Philippines, we call that as a national review lecturer, meaning to say you travel from one place to another, teaching different students who are preparing for their national certification or national licensure examination. So from there, I used to speak in front of thousands of students, preparing them, inspiring them, sharing them the wisdom of what it is to be a medical technology. Then, after quite some time, after 5 years to be exact, I wanted to grow more, in particular in the professional aspect of my life. I wanted to explore the different possibilities. I wanted to immerse myself more in the profession. For the reason being that I realized that for the past years of my professional career, I've been simply repeating what my teachers taught me years before during my undergraduate years. And I realized that I wanted to instill more to my students. I wanted more. I wanted to offer more to my students. And what better way to offer more, to give more to my students than to immerse myself personally in the field? And so from there, I moved out of the academic life. I moved out of the university life and applied as a medical technologist in one of our tertiary hospitals, one of our private hospitals here in my city, and that was Notre Dame de Chartres Hospital. Notre Dame de Chartres Hospital is one of the largest hospitals here in my city, where I currently live. And from there, I did not start from the top. I started from the very bottom. I started to be a phlebotomist first. I was assigned first at the phlebotomist section. And then from there, I've learned a lot and I was assigned to the hematology section. I've learned a lot. I've excelled. I've attended all the necessary trainings, all the necessary seminars that will prepare me for my future career in the profession. Then from there, after serving a year, luckily, there was an open slot for the hematology head position. And then I applied, and luckily, I was promoted to be the hematology section head in our hospital, in our healthcare facility. And not only that, after being promoted in my hospital, I was also given the opportunity because of my academic background. I was given the opportunity to handle interns, to handle practitioners who are preparing for for their licensure examination, or rather students who are preparing for their graduation. We call them interns, internship program. Our facility is also a training program for medical laboratory students, and luckily, because of my background, I was given the position to be the training officer of these students. And as a training officer, I was responsible actually for preparing them in their licensure examination, just like my previous works. And aside from that, I'm also responsible for their immersion in the diagnostic level, in the diagnostic laboratory setup. And from there, I am also responsible for their development holistically. When we say holistically, prepare them professionally, and prepare them in terms of their maturity towards the medical laboratory profession. And also, aside from being the training officer of that institution, I was also given the HIV medical technology position, meaning I perform and counsel individuals who wanted to perform HIV training, because here in the Philippines, we have a special training. Not every medical technologist is given the right to perform and conduct HIV testing in individuals. You need to undergo a series of training here in my country, given by the national government, in order for you to be certified to perform HIV testing. So I was given that position. And also after that, I engaged myself. I was eager. I'm eager. Until now, I'm eager to know more. I'm eager to develop, to hone my skill in the field of medical technology. And I joined myself in a series of trainings that will help me pursue that goal. Luckily, one of the national government's offices conducted its very first virology training for medical technologists, and I was one of the pioneers who were trained by the national government to perform a series of tests in virology. Who would have thought that they were actually preparing us, correct, to handle the situation specifically now, given that we are in the era of a viral pandemic. Luckily, I was trained by the government to handle such situation. And aside from that, aside from working inside the hospital, I was also given an opportunity by the national government, the Department of Health, to work also in one of their branches, particularly in the National Health Laboratory Network, wherein it's a group of laboratory professionals who are there and assigned by the government to assess different laboratories that would also be that would want to be assessed by our office. And moreover, the goal of our institution, the National Health Laboratory Network, is to create a unified environment for all the different laboratories in the entire country. So that's the program of the my association. So usually, I've been very busy. I've been immersing a lot in the field of medical technology in my country. So hopefully, in the future years to come, still I would continue to hone, because just like what I made mention a while ago, my goal is really to know more, to expand my horizon in the field of medical laboratory technology, because I use those experiences, those bits of new informations in my day-to-day interaction with my students. Because now, I forgot to make mention that I'm also an adjunct faculty at one of the colleges here in the Philippines, the Lorma colleges. I'm currently serving in their institution as an adjunct faculty where I teach hematology for undergraduates. So Lorma Colleges is also one of the best schools offering the program here in the country. So I've been very blessed and very fortunate enough that in a period of around 6 years, 7 years in my professional career as a medical laboratory technologist, I've been exposed in those environments, namely the academic environment and the diagnostic environment. So, yeah.
Wow. Ollie Brian. Wow, in 6 years you have done a lot. And you seem to have a very strong educational when it comes to academia. And
Mm-hmm,
I love the idea of you using that experience once you get into the lab for new trainee and for current medical lab professionals. And in our interview, we're going to see where you're using that not only
mm-hmm,
inside the lab, but outside the lab. So if anybody had doubt or weren't clear about the whole process, Olibrian was really very detailed in helping us to understand
mm-hmm,
how a medical lab professional, starting as a medical lab scientist, can move from straight from out of school into teaching, which is amazing,
mm-hmm,
graduating from your program and then turn around training others almost immediately, and then being able to pivot into the lab and working up in no time to be a leader. So currently, just tell me specifically in a sentence or so, what is your current position now
mm-hmm.
in the lab?
So yeah, Lona. So currently, I'm the section head of the hematology section in our laboratory in our hospital, and also I am the training officer of interns. And aside from that, I'm also acting as the officer in charge for the phlebotomy and reception area of our laboratory. And aside from that, I'm also an HIV medical. I act as an HIV medical technologist in my hospital. Then aside from that, I also do currently I'm also involved in some government activities. Just like what I made mention a while ago, I am one of the selected few assessors in our city where we visit different laboratories. We try to assess them. Um, and check if they follow the different standards mandated by the country, and not only that, if they are also following the different standards in the international level.
That is amazing. You have your hands full.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm,
with you having that opportunity to travel to do assessments and, talking to different people, what are some of the challenges that you guys in the Philippines, in medical lab professionals, are experiencing? It's interesting to know, whether or not we're having similar challenges as medical lab professionals.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for that, Lona. Well, one of the challenges that my fellow medical technology professionals here in the Philippines are currently experiencing is the lack of visibility in the diagnostic and healthcare profession. Of course, given the setup that we are confined inside the four corners of our laboratories in front of our diagnostic machines, still a lot of people in the community, in the society are not aware that we exist, that a professional is actually responsible for performing CBCs, chemistry analysis, urinalysis, fecalysis. So a lot of people do not understand that professionals with national certificates, professionals with a high degree of understanding when it comes to quality assurance are actually involved in those pieces of papers, correct? So that is one of the challenges that we are currently facing, the lack of visibility, in particularly in the community. But fortunately enough, given the current situation, we are trying to slowly showing ourselves, making ourselves visible, in particular with the given pandemic situation. Luckily, we have been televised a lot. We have been interviewed a lot. That medical technologists are also part of the front line. That medical technologists are also actively involved, in particular during this time of the pandemic. Because here in the Philippines, before you get the chance to be diagnosed with COVID-19, you have to perform the RT-PCR test, which in our country, the only professional that can perform the test is a medical technologist. So at least we are trying slowly to be more visible compared to the previous years where we really lack visibility because of our confinement in our respective laboratories, Lona.
Wow, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm,
Because a lot of I've heard all different reasons why we
mm-hmm,
don't either get the respect or people don't know about us. And there's a lot of blame being put on professional associations. But it seems as if this is a problem internationally.
mm-hmm,
And I actually do believe that visibility has a lot to do with it. The fact that we are hidden away, we're not being seen by the patients.
mm-hmm,
Many times, they see the doctors and the nurses. A lot of times, we're not part of the care team. So that
mm-hmm.
becomes a problem internationally. So
Yep.
I'm glad that I can see where, it's not just in the US, it's an
Mm-hmm,
international problem.
mm-hmm,
So, so as an educator, I know, you're training students who are coming through.
mm-hmm.
So what challenges are you encountering with the educating students?
Yep. Thank you for that question, Lona. Well, of course, one of the different problems that we educators encounter in during our practice is, of course, in a classroom setup, we are dealing with heterogeneous individuals, meaning we deal with a lot of people with different emotions, and as an educator, it's a challenge now for us on how do we balance that environment. Wherein the ones who are behind will can cope up with those who are ahead. And those who are ahead will also learn the same thing that those who are behind will be learning. So it's more on creating an environment, an equal environment to each and every students in order to cater their needs. That's one of the challenges that I often experience as an educator. The differences in terms of their perspective, in terms of their emotions, and so on. Now, given the pandemic situation, things were a little bit more difficult in the academia setup. Given the pandemic, schools were actually shut down here in the Philippines. Not necessarily shut down totally, because still there were online classes, but face to face interactions are prohibited, starting the pandemic around March last year. And during that time, I was in the middle of an internship program. I was in the middle of a position as a faculty member as well before during the time. And when the pandemic hit our country, we had to convert and change our medium at an instant from face to face to online. And that was very challenging, in particular to the laboratory subjects, because it's very difficult to inculcate the skill. It's very difficult to teach them how to perform, for example, phlebotomy, microscopy, differential count in front of the computer. But given the situation, given the pandemic, as an educator, I had to be creative in order to inculcate those things despite the given situation, despite the limitations that the online classes were actually offering. And luckily, after a year, we're still faced with that same challenge. However, I am pleased with the results that still some of my students who decided to take up their licensure examination still passed the licensure exam despite the given online situation. So, for now, we are trying to work up with our limited face-to-face internship program, limited face-to-face classes in the universities. For example, in our healthcare facility, next week we will already start. We will be starting already our limited face-to-face internship program. There will be some students already who will be coming in the laboratory, and it's a challenge because it's a very first time that we will be conducting a limited face-to-face internship program. And considering that the students who will be coming in are actually products of the online learning, so it's quite a challenge. So, despite the different challenges that we are looking forward, still we are exciting. We are excited. Sorry, we are excited because of course it's our very first time to see students once again in our facility. We are eager, and we believe we are already prepared to face those challenges. We are already prepared to inspire students who would like to become medical technologists in our healthcare facility.
Wow. I see so many similar challenges, of course.
Mm-hmm,
This challenge is, of course, international, where
mm-hmm,
now a lot of the students are dealing with this challenge of not being able to do their internship to actually come in face to face, which is very vital if they're going to do internship. These are practical. It's not something you can do online. So I'm glad right now we're at that point where students can come in, maybe not the same volume that we used to have. And it seems as if that's the same thing that's happening for you in the Philippines. So it's great that they can come in. But as you say, they're kind of at a disadvantage because most of their learning was online. So now we're probably going to have to double up while they're in the lab doing their internship to make sure that they already had grasped those concepts. So in a way it's going to be difficult even for the trainers, probably putting in a little bit more time and effort to make sure that the students actually grasp some of those concepts. And you'll probably see it when they're doing the actual work, if they understood what they were taught. So I see this
mm-hmm,
as a major challenge. Hopefully, with like most challenges, there's usually a lot of good that comes out of it. So hopefully we'll see some good that, came out of this. So, in a way, as you're saying, we encounter challenges, but with those challenges comes opportunities.
mm-hmm,
For medical lab professionals, the challenge of being invisible with COVID kind of force us to be moving in the up, like you're saying, you're doing interviews on television and otherwise. There are more people asking questions, people getting to know a little bit more about us. And I know for you as an educator, that's something that you have to deal with like on a regular basis, not only during the pandemic, but then you have to deal with other healthcare professionals that may not even understand enough about what we do, people in the public in general. So can you tell the audience a little bit about how you're actually educating other healthcare professionals or just public when it comes to the public health? Let us know a little bit about what you're doing in that area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Lona. Well, one of the things that I'm currently doing in order to show people, in order to showcase our profession as a medical technologist, I actually created a Facebook page wherein I put a lot of medical technology stuff, which is accessible to everyone. And I get a lot of comments not only from the medical technology profession, but also from other types of professionals. There are some people who are messaging me who are engineers. I've also encountered some professional, not nearly some professionals, but some individuals who are only planning to take up medical technology, who are inspired to know more about the profession. So that's actually one way, and it's actually free. So I've been very passionate enough to create that Facebook page. And aside from that, in my day-to-day discussions, every time I talk to my patients, because I do a lot of customer care in the hospital, because I forgot to make mention that I'm also part of the customer care team in our profession. We train new staff, not only medical technologists, but I also train nurses, pharmacists, radiologists who are new in our hospital to be more involved in customer care. So I do a lot of customer care training to our new staff, and also just like what I made mention to our patients, I always talk to them. I always explain to them if I have the time. I always explain to them what we are, who we are, what do we do, and of course, aside from that, I'm also involved. I also have first-hand experience, especially if I talk to my patients, because I'm also consulting with some of my patients if they have some tests, because some tests here in the Philippines involves counseling and consultations before we perform those tests. And so I am given the chance to talk to them and explain to them. And aside from explaining them what the test is for, I also give a chance to explain what we do, what I am, and what is a medical technologist in general. So that's one way of showcasing. Those are the ways that I do in order to showcase more our profession, medical technology, in the public.
Wow, that's interesting and exciting that
Mhm.
you're having a opportunity to deal directly with the patients when it comes to some tests. So you have to do counseling. Would it be like HIV test? I mean, what are some of the tests that you would have to, or is it like fat for fasting and other things? What are some of the
Mhm.
tests that you would have to counsel the patients?
Okay, thank you. So, one of the tests that I have to perform counseling would be HIV testing here in the Philippines. It's mandatory. It is by law in the Philippines that prior to HIV testing, you need to talk to the patient. You need to counsel them, to teach them about what is HIV, what is STD, the purpose of the test, and so on. And aside from that, I also counsel or talk to some patients if they have some questions, especially if I endorse to them or advertise to them the different packages that we offer in the hospital. So I also talk to them. I also teach them on the preparation and how the tests are performed, what is it for, the significance, and so on. So those are basically the things, or those are basically the times that I have one-on-one interactions with my patients. And of course, I do a lot of reception work because just like what you mentioned a while ago in your introduction, I'm also in charge for the reception. And in the reception, I always involve myself there because I do believe that the reception is the face of the laboratory. Therefore, in the reception area, you get a chance to involve a lot and to expose a lot of what we are, what is the laboratory all about. So I love rotating or working at the reception area in our healthcare facility.
That is awesome. I love
Mm-hmm.
that involvement of the medical lab professional with the patient. So I know earlier you mentioned some of the challenges with medical lab professionals, and you brought up a few things that you guys are doing. Is there anything else that you would want to add in terms of solution regarding some of these challenges that medical lab professionals are facing in the Philippines?
Mm-hmm. So just like what I made mention a while ago, one of the problems that we are currently facing as a professional here in our country would be the visibility. Well, I would say one of the solutions is to be us professionals to be more active in our professional itself. I do believe that as a medical technologist, I have a a chunk of responsibility when it comes to the healthcare profession or when it comes to the healthcare management team. And this chunk of responsibility, I usually involve myself a lot. I do not confine myself in the laboratory, and I hope that my fellow medical professionals will also do the same to be more involved, to be proactive, not to be confined by the four walls of their laboratory, to know more in the profession, to update themselves with the profession in the medical technology. Because by learning more about the profession, you can be more active on it. And at the same time, by becoming more active, you get a chance to experience a lot. And these experiences can be very useful in order to endorse, in order to advertise the profession with other people, especially to those who are not knowledgeable on what we do. Because if you limit yourself, because if you limit yourself in the four corners of your laboratory, then you do not grow as a professional. If you do not grow, you do not have the experience. You cannot experience. If you cannot experience, you cannot share. If you cannot share, you cannot educate. If we cannot educate, then we cannot be more visible. And so that's one of the solutions to be more active, to know more, to explore more in the profession, and not to be confined in the laboratory.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, taking that onus on ourselves to bring more visibility, to have more exposure, not being afraid, kind of get out of our comfort zone and get more involved. Look for opportunities in which you can get involved. And I see where for you, you talk about the government, which is probably similar, I'm wondering, to our professional associations that are set certain standards and rules, and so you're involved with some of those, but then you're doing things not only depending on what the government is doing to bring visibility, but you're doing it on your own. Hopefully, you'll have different teams in your own lab that, you know, helping to educate the public, using those
Mhm.
opportunities to educate the public and educate other healthcare professionals. So, thanks for all the things that you're doing. Thanks for sharing with us so we can see some of the challenges that you're experiencing in the Philippines. There's a lot that's very similar to what we're experiencing. There are some things that are probably a little different. I know we had a conversation and you talked a little bit about how medical lab professionals are seen more as a stepping stone to something else. Could you talk a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, thank you for bringing up that up. Yeah, just like what I made mention before in some of our previous conversations, here in the Philippines, medical technology is simply viewed as a stepping stone into medical school. And so I want to correct that perspective. I want to show the community that medical technology is not just a pre-medicine course, but rather it's a profession on its own. I am guilty about that. Before I practiced my medical technology professional career, my only perception about medical technology is a 4-year bachelor's degree that will prepare an individual who would want to pursue a medical career or a medicine school. However, when I started immersing myself and when I started to be more involved in the medical technology profession, I started experiencing a lot of things. I started to grow my knowledge when it comes to the medical laboratory profession. And so I am challenged by that. I am challenged by the idea that a lot of people view medical technology as a career on its own. I want to correct their perspective in my own little ways. Slowly, I want to correct their perception about medical technology and to show them that medical technology is a profession on its own and that medical technology is also actively involved in the healthcare setup, in the healthcare scenario, and that in the healthcare, it is not only limited to doctors and nurses, but also to other allied healthcare professionals. And one of those allied healthcare professionals is the medical laboratory technology profession.
Yeah, thanks for helping us with that because that was new to me and very interesting to
Mhm.
see that misconception about who we are. It's almost like a pre-med program that, and I suppose if the public don't know, and even when they go to school, if they're not educated while they're doing that program, that this is a whole career by itself and not a stepping stone.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for that. Thanks for all you're doing in the Philippines. Thanks for bringing this to the rest of the world. In terms of working, if we can work together internationally and collaborate to bring visibility to medical lab professionals, that's really great. And so tell us, Olibrian, how can the listeners learn more about you, maybe follow you or support you in some of the things that you're doing?
Thank you very much, Lona. So let me take this opportunity to, of course, advertise my Facebook page. You can just simply type my name, Olibrian Mallari, and my Facebook page will already pop up. So please do follow and like. And also, I have an Instagram account The name of my Instagram account is Slides and Lenses. And I usually upload every now and then some microscopic images, and I tell a short description about the things that we see under the microscope. Um, that's why it's called lenses. Okay, so I hope that you also follow my Instagram. So, and also aside from that, I'm very open to those who are interested to become future medical technologists, those who would want to know more about the medical technology profession. You can always message me on Facebook. You can always type my name. Well, what I would say to those who are, or for those who would like to pursue a career in the medical technology, is that first, you need to widen your horizon. You do not need to confine yourself inside the four corners of the laboratory. Believe in yourself that medical technology is a career and it is a profession in itself. And next, aside from that, number two, do not be afraid to know more. Do not be afraid to try, even though you will be seeing a lot of rejections along the way, just like what I did in the past. Still, at least you've tried. Do not be afraid to try. And number three, of course, always believe in your capabilities as a professional. Do not hesitate or do not doubt in your abilities as a medical technology professional. And always, and last but not the least, of course, will be to inculcate and incorporate quality assurance and quality control in every task that we do. Medical technology is the only profession, I think, that has been already inculcated in our chromosomes the idea of quality control and quality assurance. Way back in our undergraduate years, quality assurance and quality control has always been introduced. And I think it's one of our trademarks, one of our characteristics as a medical technology profession, quality control and quality assurance. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Olibrian. Thanks for sharing. And good luck and all the best in all the things that you're doing. And thank you, listeners. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of eLABorate Topics. You can listen to this and other episodes on directimpactbroadcasting.com or any of your favorite podcast platforms. You can email us at elaboratetopics@directimpactbroadcasting.com if you want to be a guest on the show or you want to request topics that you'd want us to talk about. So until you hear from us again, which is every Tuesday, have a great.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of eLABorate Topics, where your hosts discussed relevant strategies for laboratory professionals. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us on directimpactbroadcasting.com. Stay tuned for another episode with information you can use to excel